identifying what the stories are that establish your values. I'm sure in the legal space, justice is very important to you, but there's a why there, right? There's a moment where you saw somebody not getting their fair shake, or maybe they were rushed through a process because justice may be blind, but it's also checking its watch constant. You know what I mean? People don't get their second in court, not their hour in court.
Justice is blind, but it's also very technical.
Right. Yeah. And so fighting to make sure that people get their full story out in a courtroom. And so there's a why. You didn't just go and look at this and say, well, what's a good paying job? There was a motivation for you that put you on that path.
Big time. So, this is a good point where I want to pick your brain, because what I do as a trial lawyer is for thousands of different people, I have to learn their stories. I have to learn what makes them tick. I have to learn how the injustice they faced changed their life, changed the person who they are. So it's all about finding these stories, talking to the people, again, listening. So everything you're saying is resonating with me, because I have to use that in my own practice to be able to get those nuggets.
Welcome to Harry Handles It, a podcast where we dive into the world of personal growth, success strategies, and everything in between. I'm your host, Harry Nalbandyan, and today we're going to chat with an incredible guest who has some amazing insights to share. Remember, no matter what life throws your way, I'm here to help you handle it. So let's get started.
Welcome to the Harry Handles It podcast. Today we've got the wonderful Matthew Egan on, who is the founder and chief story officer of Content on Call. That's a company that helps purpose-driven organizations tell meaningful stories through video and content. Matt, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and what brought you to Content on Call.
So we, for 12 years, ran the Peter Mayhew Foundation. Peter was Chewbacca in Star Wars. Oh. And so we were traveling to all these conventions. You can see all the nerdy stuff around the office. And we were making these films about taking relief supplies to a hurricane zone, or, working with kids in the hospital. And a friend of ours had said, hey, you're making these videos about these nonprofit that you're working with. Because normally we would like help fundraise with somebody else. And they were like, you could make a nonprofit that makes content for nonprofits. And so we were at the Liberty Bell, and I literally, when you're naming things is the hardest, because like that one guy that doesn't even use the account anymore will have the @ handle for the thing that you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And I came up with Content on Call. Like, it had never been said. It's smooth, but it had never been said on Google before. And when you find that, you're just like, okay, buy the domain, but you know what I mean? Like, you do all the things. And we named it right there at the Liberty Bell, like on my phone, and bought reserved the handles and did all the things. And so we've been around for 2 years. We've helped about 20 different organizations, from like Meals on Wheels at the local level, and worked with animal rescues, worked with childhood sex trafficking programs that provide housing for people coming out that were victims of trafficking. It's kind of all over the place. So it's really cool, because then our ignorance as storytellers, as we listen, we get really impressed by what we're hearing. And then if it's interesting to us, it probably will be interesting to the audience, right? So then we go in there kind of with fresh eyes. And as we go, wow. And I think most people don't realize, like you probably deal with this every day, because what you do is so educated, but you've done it 1,000 times. So for you, it's not as interesting anymore. But if somebody was watching what you were doing, it's exceptional, right? But because you had to go through so many years of school, and you've had to do it so many times to where it's really interesting. But you're so close to it. And I think most of these people, they're so close to what they do, they don't realize how interesting it is. And so then that's been our mission, is just kind of shining a light on the people who are trying so hard to make the world a better place.
That's incredible. And tell me a little bit about your storytelling and story making background that helps with your mission and purpose of developing content for nonprofits. So
I was a big fan of like Kevin Smith and Steven Spielberg and Quentin Tarantino and stuff as a kid, right? And I was a creative writing major at Orange County High School of the Arts, and I wanted to, we all thought we would all tell. So when Kevin Smith made Clerks, he made it on a budget of like $10,000, right? Which is just completely insane and unheard of now to create something like that. But we all had that image of like, you know, if we just owned a camera, we could make these things, right? And so then eventually I had the camera, and then it was like it opens all these doors about like what stories are you going to tell, and then we did a film in 2023 for animal wildlife rescue that they work with skunks and raccoons and possums and things like that. And we actually won a film festival, the Viva Texas Film Festival. We won like the big, it's behind my head here, but it's like the big overall award for the film festival, which is just like absolutely insane. But it was a charity story, right? And so it was this one woman, Tina Davis, that's the wildlife rehabber there, and she like sacrificed her income. She like everything to just make sure that that she could take care of his men. And there were times when she had like 200 possums at one time that she was taking care of. And so, but we don't want those animals in our homes, but they provide they eat bugs, they eat snakes, like they eat the things that we don't, they eat the dead, right? Like they're part of nature's like cleanup process, right? Yeah. And so if those animals aren't saved and kind of rehabilitated and returned to the wild, then our neighborhoods become overrun with things, you know, pests and things that we don't want. And then we're surrounded by chemicals. You know what I mean? It's just, it's a lot better to let nature do what nature's good at. And so when that film won the film festival, it was just like, oh my God, like these are stories worth telling, and they're resonating with people so that, you know, it doesn't have to be a story about, you know, an individual or a business or whatever, like these nonprofits that are working so hard, that are sacrificing so much, like that makes for really interesting storytelling.
So how do you go about finding the story? Because in some of these organizations, I imagine there's a lot of people with a lot of different stories, a lot of different backgrounds that bring the organization to life, that help the possums, there's a big logistical challenge with all of this. So what's your process for finding that one true key story to be able to, you won the film festival, but how do you find that story to disperse throughout everybody else so that story resonates with everybody?
So I'm in the process of building, I don't know that I have a final name for it, but I'm calling it kind of the storyteller's operating system. And the key behind the operating system is to inventory your stories. And I don't know that we do that enough.
Interesting.
And so I'll use Meals on Wheels here in San Antonio as an example. Vincent, who's the president there, he always was about the nutrition and the meals and getting people fed, right? And that was the focus. And you think about Meals on Wheels, right? They deliver meals to seniors every 5 days a week. And but then as time went on for him, he realized that the human connection between the delivery driver and the senior that they're delivering to was just as important, because that relationship might be the only person that senior sees that day, right? Maybe they have family, maybe they're far away, maybe they don't have family, maybe their spouse passed away. Like, you know, isolation, and this we learned this during COVID, but isolation is as bad for our bodies as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And so these seniors, they're living COVID lockdown every day. They can't drive. They can't, you know, go do whatever they you know, and so this delivery driver for Meals on Wheels. And so then when you're hearing about this delivery driver is the lifeline. It's their only social contact. That process, that moment, okay, that's a light bulb, where that's a big part of the story, where it's not only bringing a meal, it's not only that they have nutritionists and that they know if you are on low sodium, or you know, like, is it a heart focused meal, whatever, but it's also that relationship that they form where it's like, how are you doing? You know, what's up? And we just filmed with, so the Home Depot Foundation and Meals on Wheels work together, which I think is really cool. And so they found, we worked with a woman, 17 years in the Army, right? So like, this is somebody that has served our community immensely. And her door and window had broken. And so then the Home Depot Foundation and Meals on Wheels together worked together to repair her door. And while they were there, they were like, do you want us to put a bar in your shower so that when you get out of the bathtub, like you don't fall? And they looked at, what does she need?
That's
right. And so they might say, well, we're Meals on Wheels, we deliver meals. But that's so not even the tip of the iceberg of as far as what their story is, right? And so we sit down and we listen. And I know we're going to talk about AI a little bit. And I think there's a big parallel here where we need to be, you know, Van Jones from TV, like he's like a commentator on CNN. He worked with a nonprofit called Green for All 100 years ago back in Oakland. And like he and I worked together. I interviewed him and we did some things then. And he said that everybody wants to be as powerful a speaker as Dr. King was. But the key to like building community and to building a coalition is to be as powerful a listener as Dr. King was a speaker. And you're inviting the other person to speak. And, you know, I think I come from great privilege. And I think, you know, I was always the one raising his hand. And I always had kind of the enthusiasm and the answer. And now I sit and I listen, you know, and it's an invitation to invite the other party to speak and to share kind of what they're doing. And you start to kind of go, and my background is like SEO, like search engine optimization. So very keyword. And so it's very distilled, right? So like you have to distill down San Antonio air conditioning, right? Like whatever the keyword is. And so I feel like there's a big parallel to where, you know, I'm looking for the nuggets, right? As I listen. And then I have them kind of repeat it back where it's like, you know, hey, you said this. Can you say this a little tighter, right? And then we get into kind of like formulating the sound bites and things like that.
One thing that you said that really resonated was you're creating the operating system for finding and developing stories. And I just read a book called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. And I think the biggest takeaway that I got from that book was log down your stories. Everybody has a story. Every day there's an interaction that happens that is story worthy.
Absolutely.
Right? That those little pieces of nuggets. And if you log them down, you can develop bigger stories around those little stories that lead to a bigger message and a bigger impact than just, like you said, we deliver meals to people who can't find them.
Right.
That's incredible. So tell me more about the operating system and kind of your thinking about
so
that.
My girlfriend and I, Laurel, so we work together 24/7. And I know like we're in a very fortunate, rare situation where we really love being, you know, like we were really good friends before we wanted to hang out. And then now we work together. So we're hanging out constantly. And she is somebody that wants to read a story. She's somebody that she wants the instructions. I want to watch a video. Right. And so from the in-house of my own life, I know that it's not a one size fits all thing, but also from a storyteller standpoint, I'm a technical guy. I'm going to tell it from a certain way. She's mom. She's warm. She, you know, it's more on an emotional side. So she and I can also tell the same story in a different way. And so we have one little story that we've identified, you know, like you're saying, I call it inventory. You're saying, you know, like from you know, logging it down. But if we don't identify what those stories are, I'll give you a great example. And I probably tell this story to death, but IBC Bank, it's like a regional bank here in town. I was working for an agency. This was probably 15 years ago. And I was being paid $500 a month to do SEO for IBC Bank through an agency. And I get onto a meeting one day and the guy on the other end of the call said, I don't understand why we are paying $5,000 a month and this is all we're getting. The agency straight up added a zero and called it a day. And they were doing nothing on the project. And so they were just hoping that it was so technical that the other party wouldn't know what was going on, right? And I remember like deer in the headlights, right? Because like, what do you do? Do you out your agency that's telling you like, and there was like a rep, and so I just kind of let him deal with it. But afterwards, I was like, hey guys, like I understand, you know, 50% markup or whatever, but we're talking about 900% markup, right? and they were contributing nothing outside of like bringing the deal. So And I know, like, okay, infinite scalability, whatever, all that's great, but it was just the client didn't feel that they were getting the value. And so that became kind of a, like, I'm a very transparent person, so I want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on so that there's not like, because that was shocking to me, right? And then I tell that story, but then Laurel might tell that story completely differently, right? And so it's kind of a matter of, identifying what the stories are that establish your values, right? And I'm sure in the legal space, justice is very important to you, but there's a why there, right? There's a moment where you saw somebody not getting their fair shake, or maybe they were rushed through a process because, as you deal with this every day, but we don't. Justice may be blind, but it's also checking its watch constant. You know what I mean? People don't get their second in court, not their hour in court.
Justice
right?
is blind, but it's also very technical.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, fighting to make sure that people get their full story out in a courtroom, right? And so there's a why that you didn't just go and look at it and say, well, what's a good paying job? There was a motivation for you that put you on that path.
Big time. Sorry to
no.
This is a good point where I want to pick your brain, because what I do as a trial lawyer is, for thousands of different people, I have to learn their stories. I have to learn what makes them tick. I have to learn how the injustice they faced changed their life, changed the person who they are. So it's all about finding these stories, talking to the people, again, listening. So everything you're saying is resonating with me, because I have to use that in my own practice to be able to get those nuggets. But so similar to you getting the nuggets from the nonprofits and finding those stories, once you have those nuggets, how do you take those nuggets and then make it into a beautiful story? With AI or without AI?
Well, so a lot of what we do, fortunately, I was one of those people that hated vertical video when everything first came out and it was vertical. I was like, make video horizontal again. I've really embraced the 20 to 30 to 40 second statement, and what I love about that is that it's not about a 2-hour film. It's about 100 little story moments. We were in the home of a gentleman here in San Antonio, and he was in his 90s, and he was fighting very tough colon cancer. And at the end of interviewing him, he was talking about how he called his wife the head nurse in charge. And she was taking care of him, but that he would have traded places with her in a heartbeat if he could be the one taking care of her, because he couldn't get out of bed. There was literally a hospital bed in his room. But he still let us come in and interview him. He still gave thanks to Meals on Wheels for, at least that was one thing his wife didn't have to worry about, right? And so that was that. But then at the same time, after that, he said to us, hey, tell me your names. And he took out this little tin, like a little kid's lunchbox tin, and he wrote our names down on his prayer list. And I'm not like a prayer list guy, but the compliment of, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like the compliment of, hey, what you're doing is important. I'm going to pray for you. I want to add you to my prayer list here. And it just, I get goosebumps even thinking about it, because it was, here we were telling his story, but then he said, I want to remember you, when he very easily could be only focused on himself and his problems and his difficulties and the struggles that his wife has keeping him alive day to day. Right. But he was thinking about it. And, so all those little moments, here's his story, here's her story, here's the impact on us, right? Like every little moment creates these, and each one of those can be a reel, can be a 20-second, 30-second, whatever that is. But it's all an opportunity to show somebody who you are, right? And by saying, this matters to me, and then I think what you highlight, and I don't know that lawyers get enough credit, but you're helping people constantly, right? And you're helping to reshape their path. Somebody gets in trouble, it can be the end of their world or not.
Yes.
depending on the help that they get. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So let's talk about AI and how you use that in either the creation of the content or how you use it to drive the story behind the content.
So AI, as we discuss it, is a learning language model, right? And so I think the biggest mistake that people make is to not teach the AI. It's a learning model. So we have to teach it. I will open up ChatGPT on my phone and I will record 9-10 minutes of thoughts, and I will just speak it out in text to speech right into ChatGPT, because the more context you can give it, the better it is. And so what I love as my sidekick in AI is I will tell it a story. I will give it the context of a situation, and I'll ask it to kind of keep all the details the same, but like, what is your take on this, right? And so then you get back 5 or 6 different ways of saying something that you've already said. And so, I mean, you know how it is when you're trying to like fill your social media posts for the week.
Yeah.
What if you could tell the same story different ways? And it's a 30-minute sit down that you're doing with one story or one bundle of stories. But then that gets crafted into a thing that maybe 2 days a week for the next 3 months is from that one little brainstorming moment, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's just a matter of like, I want to tell this story differently. And then maybe you still then record it separately, but then you're able to, it's the type of ideation that used to take a team of 5 or 6 people.
Right.
But now it can be the information that you provide with your sidekick spinning out iterations on that, if you give it enough to work with.
So do you use GPT or any of the AI tools for that reason only, for telling stories from a different perspective? It's different perspectives, or do you use some of the AI tools that are video based as well to help tell the stories?
So there's a tool called Opus Clip that is like for like a podcast setting like this, and you give it the podcast and in its entirety, and then it will pull out standalone story pieces. But I'm a bit of a snob. I like to edit manually. So I will let the AI identify those moments that it thinks standalone in 30-second, in a 30-second thing. And then you watch it, right? Because it's from the video. And then and I'll go manually pull it out because I want to fine tune. I'm very big on body language. So like if you and I were talking about your podcast, I think you're too far away from the camera. Like versus where I'm framed, like I want to see you, right? So I would bring, and I know you're trying to get the sign in and all that, but like the relationship is you, right? So I want, if I'm telling a point and you're nodding and you're like, I'm an animated guy, but like, if you're nodding along, that body language implies that whatever I said is really wise or sharp or whatever is correct. And so like you want that body language to appear. And so that's like, I use the AI to help identify the message.
Interesting.
But I go back and forth. And then when I do podcasts, I'm very purposeful about, I'm on camera even when you're talking. Because I'm going to cut to that moment where you say something, because you got to go back and forth to make it interesting, right? And so I like to do that where it's like, you make a good point and I'm nodding. So somebody's watching it on the toilet with closed captions. They're not watching the full production value of a thing, right? But they're seeing that the other guy is nodding. They're seeing the agreement in the other, you know what I mean? So like that sends a signal. You should listen to this because this guy thought he was right. Right. And just that little bit of a detail in the body language is enough to I forget her name. There's a body language expert. She was on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and it just like it rocked my world because it was like, how do you include body language in the content that you create? So like we've been very purposeful about what the body language of the people in a scene portrays. I'll send you the link to the book. It's just fascinating stuff.
Please, that sounds very interesting. I mean, because when we try cases in person, maybe a lot of communication is nonverbal.
Absolutely.
And so I don't really think about that in the context of this podcast setting, even though it's natural to nod and whatever. Like you, I'm also animated and active listening. But I didn't think about that in the context of this setting and how the body language can give those nonverbal cues for somebody.
Yeah. I had a different call earlier today. I didn't have a caller, but for this, I put a call. You know what I mean? I wanted to make sure that I was like respecting a lawyer podcast, right? Like everything is, and maybe that extends beyond body language, but all of those ingredients are part of the visual, right?
Yeah. Shifting back to AI a little bit, I mean, as a creative storyteller, how can you build a system that doesn't take the creativity out of the process if you're using AI tools and not give the AI tools all of the creative process?
So this is where having an inventory of your stories is so important. Because if you have a document that you can copy and paste into the AI tools to let it know who you are, and this is where you would build a context that is like that carries on, right? Have you used contexts in like ChatGPT?
Contexts.
So a context is like an ongoing topic. And so you're saying like, hey, what I just told you, rather than asking it individual questions that are all separate, you're saying, hey, under the content on call context, I want to make sure that you understand this is our mission statement. This is the, and like, and then we were doing using AI to do messaging for a nonprofit, and what headlines to have on their website and things like that. And I would say, okay, here's 5 questions. Please answer these questions. And I sat there with the founder, and I said, here's the 5 things that came back. And she's very particular. She wants to make sure that we're saying the right word. We're talking about people with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities. And so making sure that those people are respected in the language is very important. And so we were literally at a Dave & Buster's. Her son was playing foosball. We were sitting at after having a meal, and the AI was giving us stuff, and I was correcting it live, right? And I think most people don't do the correcting step. So then you would say, hey, under this context for my company, you said XYZ. I'd really prefer if you said the individual instead of disabled person or whatever that is, right? Yeah. And so people don't play ping pong enough with their AI. They get the answer back and they run with it or they don't. But if you say, hey, I don't like this part, it will save that under your context permanently. And and then you'll have that kind of messaging. I love it from I have ADD. I know that probably will come as a surprise given the topical being all over the place, but having the AI, I hate to call it like an assistant, but like, the tool to be able to kind of bounce ideas off of and like refine and distill is just so valuable. You can't trust it. I was playing the new the Oblivion remake that they put out, Elder Scrolls, and I asked AI, hey, for this quest, what do I do? And it said basically take out that guy in the public. Well, in reality, it was do not let anyone see you take the guy out. Yeah. And so the AI gave it to me literally backwards, right? And it had gone and Googled it itself, and it had gone and crawled the guide, and it had pulled it from that, but it pulled it wrong, right? Yeah. So you always have to scrutinize what AI comes back with, and I will get into whole arguments with AI. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not checking your work and stuff? Because it's like, I've had it where 80% is wrong.
Yeah.
And you have to really, and that's where like you hear about lawyers that get in trouble all the time because they, I've written contracts using AI. Contracts is one of those things that like, it's such an easy thing for these things to crawl, right? Yeah. But you have to check the work. Right. You have to have a real human being that goes in there and goes, okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. Love this. Love, but if you don't, if you don't check the work, but that's, and people are like, oh, that's theft. Yeah. Because, and I guarantee you, even as a lawyer yourself, you have copied from one contract into another, from another, whatever. We all do it. Right.
Yes.
Like, that's how you somebody wrote it once, there's no reason to write it again if that language already, and maybe we tweak it, whatever, but there's no reason to reinvent the wheel every day. And so that, like, to me, AI is the same thing, where it's just a matter of kind of, it's the next Google, right? Like Google changed the game, search engines changed the game, and it's not AI, it's not Skynet. It's, a lot of companies treat it like that, and they're letting AI make hiring decisions, firing decisions. You can't submit a resume anymore without AI going through it, looking for keywords and stuff. And that's terrifying because of how often it's wrong, right? It's like, okay, well, the AI said we should hire this person. Okay, do you think we should hire that person? You know what I mean?
What do you think?
That's a human being. A human being should always. But then I'll tell you, so Genie, not air conditioning, garage door opener company, I got on their chat and I said, hey, my garage door has 2 blinking red lights. And the AI came back and it said, if you have 2 blinking red lights, you need to do da, 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 da. And it knew it. Nice. It had it down because it was a set, like, if this, then this, right?
Yeah, you have to give it parameters.
Right. But they had trained it on the manual, like really, really well. And it eventually I got to the point where it's like, okay, you need a real person, but
call us to schedule a service.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, like 90% of the problems, it probably is, if the 2 blinking lights mean this, then you need to do this, right? And so that's an example where they trained it really well, but when it can't do the job, then it eventually still has to send you out to a real person.
Yeah. Well, this was a fascinating conversation, Matt. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Tell our listeners how they can find you and find information about Content on Call.
Head to contentoncall.org and see information, including some of the stories that we've been telling for the nonprofits that we help. And also for me, at Egan Film, EGANFILM on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today on Harry Handles It. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and found some valuable takeaways. If you're facing challenges in your own life or business, remember that you're not alone. Together, we can handle anything that comes our way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you liked what you heard. Until next time, keep pushing forward and handling life with confidence.